Hello and welcome to SHRP Talk, the show by washed-up athletes for washed-up athletes looking to be their best self. On today's episode, the brothers and I were joined by Justin Kraft. Justin is a former college golfer and current golf pro at Spring Hills up in Minnesota. We dive a little bit into his background, how he got into golf, his college golf career, and then how he got into his current role. We nerd out on a bunch of different topics as related to the skill of swinging a golf club and how he goes about teaching his students both in person and online. We also dive into some actionable tips for not only the people listening, but also me and my brothers as well. So it's great to sit down with Justin and pick his brain a little bit on his approach to teaching golf and many other things. So thanks for tuning in and hopefully you enjoy.
Before we get rolling with today's episode, I want to take a minute to tell you about SHRP Training. Snyder Health, Recovery, and Performance Training is designed for former college athletes to improve their physical, mental, and spiritual health. For only $12 a month, you can choose a training plan that is catered to your needs, interests, and goals, with new programs delivered each month through the Team Builder app. You'll also receive 24/7 messaging and feedback from coaches, access to an exclusive Discord to continually learn and be encouraged by others, a 20% discount on Thorne supplements, and access to the SHRP Edge, the ultimate guide to upgrading your diet, sleep, and life. Iron sharpens iron, so let us help you become your sharpest self. Now let's go.
And we're back with another edition of SHRP Talk. This evening, have the honor and pleasure of being joined by fellow Northwestern alum, golf pro, Justin Kraft. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me. Cool to chat with some Northwestern folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you always lived in Minnesota?
So actually, right out of college, right upon graduation, I lived in Sioux Center for not long, probably less than a year. I can't even remember now. So I stuck around for a little bit before I moved up here. I was a banker for like a month. So
Really? I didn't know
yes,
that.
American State Bank. I still
Just
bank
said
with
this
them.
wasn't for me, and
No, it was not for me. I was terrible at sitting at a desk. Anyone who worked at that bank can tell you that.
yeah. Have you ever pondered just going down south to like Florida or Texas so you can just
Yeah, for
golf year
sure. So
round?
when I
Or...
moved to Minnesota, I worked at Golf Tech for 2 years, and I was like, man, golf is probably so much better down south. So I did. I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, and again, I lasted
Nice.
one golf season, and I could have stayed longer. My wife didn't love it, so we ended up we were only there for one season. But I was down there, yeah, Raleigh, North Carolina, Carolina Country Club, and of course we were there from like I don't know, February to November. It was like the hottest part, like just in the dead of summer. So it was hot the whole time. Didn't even get to experience like the mild winter. But yeah, we were there for a little bit. I loved it down there. Um, and I would have stayed longer, but yeah, like I said, she didn't love it. So then we tried to come back up here closer to family. That's where I got a job at Medina. And then now I'm at Spring Hill. So I was at Medina for a few seasons, and now I'm at Spring Hill as their director of instruction. So I did dabble in the South a little bit. Just wasn't for us, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. How'd you first get into golf? Were you club in your hand right away growing up, or?
No, I sucked. I was terrible. I actually was like super infatuated with how the ball, like how does someone hit that? Like I could never get it in the air. I was always like, God, I just top it every time. So I got obsessed with just learning to hit it in the air. Um, and I think it probably started then, my curiosity with like, why does one swing feel good and then one feels bad? But you know what I mean? Like it's so inconsistent no matter who you are. So that drove me a little bit, but I would say I wasn't any good until like sophomore year of high school, probably. I was terrible then still, but like I was able to break 40 on 9 holes consistently by then. Um, and then yeah, eventually just kept playing so much that it was impossible not to get better. Played all day, every day in the summer, and eventually got to the point where I had some college level interest.
Play some other sports growing up?
Yeah, I was. I mean, depends who you ask. I was probably a better basketball player than golfer,
Yeah,
especially like junior senior year of high school. I think we had a way better like we had a good basketball team, way better than our golf team. So um, yeah, I was a big hoops guy. I played football up until high school, played baseball up until high school, and then just basketball and golf in high school. But yeah, like to this day, I still think basketball is probably more fun. It's
Right.
pretty slow and boring, you know. Um, yeah, but I was more interested in golf at the time, and I'm glad I went that route, obviously, because there's not you can't go like be a basketball coach like you can be a golf coach, right? There's not as many. There's a lot of really good basketball coaches. Not that there's not a lot of good golf coaches, but golf clubs everywhere are looking for PGA pros, so it worked out in my favor.
Yeah. Talk about that transition into some college golf and maybe how that went playing golf in an area that is cold in the winter and just combating that like warm summers, cold winters, and how to be the best golfer you can be at that level.
Yeah, I actually I I'm on one side of the opinions that can be formed. I actually think it's an advantage to have a 6 month break in your golf season. And the reason for that is I think we're given the unique opportunity to like really break down golf swings and really make like meaningful changes. So what's really hard to do, especially because I've given almost 7,000 golf lessons, is to say, hey, fix your grip, fix your aim, and then in the backswing, quit doing that with your elbow. Don't forget to turn your hips, and then, oh yeah, hit it 180 yards and dead straight. Like, what? How hard is that? Like, I can barely walk and chew gum. I can barely, hold my breath and hit the ball. Like, I can barely do two things at once. So humans are terrible at doing multiple things at the same time effectively. So what I've learned is like in the winter, I'm going to encourage you to hit it like crap, but you better do what I'm telling you to do. And then when it's time, when it's March, April, May, when it's time to go hit good golf shots, I really don't want you to think a whole lot. Really don't care if you do what I say. I want you to hit the ball close to the hole. So I try to separate those mindsets for players because that way we can grow so much faster in the off season. You can really take like 5, 6 really good months, really make your mechanics really good. And then when you get to the summer, it's like, okay, you did the hard work, forget it. Let's go play for a few months.
Yeah, I've seen you use like foam balls so you don't have to worry
Yeah,
about
you've
like
done your homework.
where the ball's going. Oh, absolutely. I got some.
Do you?
I got
Yeah.
some.
So
I got a little garage gym. I
yeah,
got a
so
little
for
mat.
the people
So
that don't understand that, right? So why would I hit a foam ball if I could hit a real ball? Well, when you hit a real ball, and we've all done it, and we hit it really well, we think we looked like Tiger Woods. Like for that one swing, like you hit it so good, you hit it, 180 yards dead straight right by the hole. You thought you looked awesome, but I've videoed enough of these swings, right? It still looked terrible. You just happened to find the middle of the face. So when you hit the middle of the club face, we get this dopamine rush. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm so good. At least that one was so good. I must have done something perfect. No, it looked like crap. You got lucky and hit the middle of the face, right? So when we're golfing, we're constantly chasing that. Whatever we can do to hit that ball super solid, that's what we're looking for. I put that foam golf ball down. All of a sudden, you have no idea if you hit it good, if you hit it bad, if you sliced it, hooked it, shanked it, topped it. You really don't know because you can't feel the feedback. So I'm able to take that part of the brain that's like striving for that, and I'm able to focus its energy on what I'm trying to get them to focus on. I'm trying to get them to focus on whatever we're doing in their swing. Do this with your wrist, do this with your elbow, whatever. And I see results at least 10 times faster than I do with a real golf ball. It's outrageous.
Speak a bit like into your college career, maybe some highlights, or just talk us through maybe some growth that you had in your game and lessons you learned from going through that experience.
Yeah, from like playing in college.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It was hard. It was like, especially at a small school, you guys know this, but like, you're the guy on the golf team or the basketball team or whatever. And if you have a crappy basketball game or baseball game or round of golf, like you think everybody knows and like, oh, Justin's really struggling. Like nobody cares. Like seriously, nobody here's like going to the NBA or going to the PGA Tour. So I think towards the end of my career, especially, I learned that like I care more than anyone else. So trying not to feel like I'm, bearing the weight of multiple people, like it literally is just me trying to play well. That was a big learning moment. And then in college, we played a lot more like 3-day or I guess I should say 54 hole tournaments. So like 3 rounds. And so I learned that like through the course of 54 holes, dude, do you know how hard it is to be perfect? Like you cannot be perfect. So you just got to understand literally everyone is going to screw up. And so in a 3-round event like that, it's not about how bad was your screw up. It's more like, how did you recover from your screw ups, and how bad were your bad ones, right? It's not how good were your good ones, how bad were your bad ones. So always trying to like understand and take a deep breath after you make double. You're 2 under through 7. You're like, I'm going to shoot 33 on the front, and you double hole 7, and you're like, I want to quit. Well, you got 48 more holes. That's bad. 46, whatever. Math is hard. More holes. It's like everyone's going to make a double. Like, how do you respond to it? How do you get back on the wagon? That was probably the biggest learning moment. We didn't do a ton of those my first 2 years. So, you're playing an 18-hole event, and you make a double, and you just want to, crawl up in a ball and cry, because you're like, oh, there goes my chance to win. Well, not necessarily. So you start getting into those bigger tournaments. It's more like PGA Tour golf, right? Those guys, Rory can make 3 doubles and still win the Masters. I hope he does. But you know what I mean? There's more room for error, and it's not about the one mistake you make. It's about how you respond to it. So I think I learned that closer to the end of my career. It just taking a little pressure off yourself really was the biggest key.
I still have never learned that.
It's
Golf,
hard.
it's
so hard.
It's so different from other sports that you have so much time to think in between swings, and especially when it's a multi-day thing. Like,
oh my gosh, you don't sleep because you're like, oh my gosh, how did I hit it left on 7? Coach Alberson said anywhere but left on 7, and you hit it there. Like, seriously. So no, you don't sleep, and you just, it's so hard. It's the only sport where like you're out there by yourself too. And trying harder does nothing for you. Like, if anything, it'll hurt. Like basketball, like box out harder, play better defense, like hustle more, rebound. In golf, it's like you try harder and you're going to make more bogeys. So it's a pain.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those hard things where you could make like swing by swing adjustments like during the round, but then again, you might just screw yourself up. So I'm curious, like your mental, like, did you have swing thoughts going through your head like as you went through the round, or were you trying to stay like as thought free as possible, just swing your swing? Or I'm curious like how that went on at your level.
That's such a good question. So there's actually like, I hate telling people, especially a podcast or people listening, like something that I just think is true. So what I'll always try to do is like verify it. And I think there are actually, they're not published yet, but like research studies going on that have tried to figure out like when people play really good golf, what's going on in their head. Is it like, oh, it's the left wrist, it's the right elbow, it's the turn, whatever it is, right? And there was recently a post, I think by the PGA Tour, it might have been the Korn Ferry Tour. It was like this board that the PGA Tour player had to fill out. And it was like, how old are you? Where'd you go to college? What's your favorite color? Oh, and what's your swing thought? And it was like 10 slides on Instagram. And I think 9 of them were like, hit it hard. Don't think. Don't shank it. Swing fast. Like nothing to do with anything other than like exactly how we feel when we're trying to hit a ball in front of our friends. It's like, okay, just hit it hard. Like whatever. So to answer your question, I have experienced both. I play better when I don't have swing thoughts. I think that can be true for most people to a point. Look, if every swing you make, the ball slices 60 yards or you hit it off the shaft and shank it, like, look, quit not thinking. We got to think of something that's going to fix that problem. But if you're a reasonable player and you've like kind of like, how many times have you, I don't know what your guys' skill level is, but like you get done with like a 9-hole stretch and you're like, wow, that was pretty good. How can I just replicate that? Like, I just want to shoot that 38 again. Like, that would be awesome. And you're like, wonder what I was thinking about. Boy, I don't know. I must have just, been in the groove. Right. And so it's funny because we end up there without thinking, but then we try to be like, oh, what was I thinking about? I think I was thinking about the wrist. And you're like, no, you weren't. You weren't thinking at all. So studies are showing, at least we think we're learning, that better players at least play better with like no thoughts. But if you're having terrible results, it's time to think about something. That would be my answer.
Did you had like a story today of like 20 different swing thoughts on a piece of paper? Yeah. That's how I feel sometimes. The
sweetest lesson taker I've ever had, kind old woman. And she just came in with a Word document she'd printed off, and it was top to bottom, and there was bold, and there were prints, and there were bullet like points. And I'm just like, do you think of this over the ball? Like, there's no way, right? And she's like, oh yeah, I try to think of all of them. So That's really hard. Like I said, it's hard to do all those things and then, oh yeah, swing a club that's this big to a ball that's this big and find a way to hit it high, straight, and perfect. Like that's impossible.
Yeah.
I'm
Speak
curious.
to yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking like you said, like middle of your high school career, you started to get into golf. That was when you kind of started taking it seriously. Did you just like start to play a bunch more, and like that's how you improved, or was there like somebody you modeled your game after? Like I really like how they swing, or I think my body type is like them, so I want to swing like them. Or how did you kind of start? Did you take lessons with somebody? What was your kind of path to
Yeah, good question.
improving in golf?
So as a freshman in high school, I swear I putted my life away that day. Like I putted so good. I did qualify for state my freshman year individually in high school. But like I said, it was not because I was good at golf. I think I chipped in twice. I remember making like a 62-foot putt. Like I stepped it off because I've never made one that long, right? So it was like literally the stars aligned. And then I got to state and I think I shot 87 the first day. So I was not good at golf. It didn't belong there. And that was kind of the point. I was like, man, I don't hit the ball good enough. I need to do something different. So I did seek out help. I went to a guy, awesome PGA pro in Sioux City, Rod Slater at Two Rivers Golf.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
awesome place. Go play Two Rivers if you don't, and you're in the area.
Them trees are getting bigger and bigger,
It's
man.
such a hard golf course too, and it was perfect for me because
Jeez.
it was like I needed to learn how to hit the ball farther and straighter, and that was a course that was going to demand that. And Rod was good at teaching it. So anyway,
Yeah.
Rod helped me like reach my peak. I believe that he did an amazing job with me, and so I probably saw him once a month for a few years, and so just committed to going to see him and followed his guidance. And he was amazing, letting me like send him videos and phone calls and stuff like that. That was before online lessons were a thing. But no, I took it seriously. I went to find like professional help. My dad had helped me as much as he could, right? He could barely break 40, so he didn't know what was going on. And I didn't know what was going on either. I was just a kid who liked to play a bunch. So, when I coach people, I tell them this too. I really think each golfer has like two things that are super important to their golf game. One would be their mechanics, and the other would be their skill level. So like mechanics is what can you see on camera and how much does it look like Adam Scott or Tiger Woods, right? How perfect does it look? But then you look at like the career of Adam Scott, who I would say, dang, I don't know what you would do different, right? That's a perfect swing. But he didn't win every tournament. So that must not tell the whole story, right? And then you look at the skill side and you're like, well, boy, there's some weird swings that just work, right? Bubba Watson, like, does anyone teach that swing? Probably not, but $50 million and 2 green jackets later, it's like, well, can't argue with the result. So I think every golfer needs to understand you probably need to build both at the same time. It can't just be, make sure your takeaway is perfect and you'll hit the ball better. Like false. Like that's not true. So for me, when I look back at my career, I think I spent so much on the skill side. Like I really didn't know what my mechanics should look like. I didn't video my swing very often. I went and took lessons. We didn't really use a ton of video, which maybe was a good thing, maybe it wasn't. But now I look at it and I'm like, I was probably almost maxed out on the skill side for what I have, and my mechanics just weren't as good as they needed to be to play like at the next level. So I don't know what the question was, but that's kind of how I think of it.
I feel like I've gone through phases where I've swung the other way too far, like get super into mechanics, especially when something's not going right. And and then like swing thoughts start coming, and it's more about like the swing looking nice. And again, like you said, there's times for that, and it was less about just striking the ball well. And
correct.
It was just,
there's a big difference, right? It's like, are you in a performance mindset or are you in an improvement/learning mindset? Because if you're in the learning mindset, that's where you better have the foam balls down, better have the video on. But if you're in a performance mindset, I tell this people all the time, hole 17, TPC Sawgrass, it's 138. You got to hit the green for $1 million. Dude, you better not be thinking of or caring what your swing looks like in that moment, right? Like, hit the green. Find a way to hit the green. Be an athlete. Use your athletic intuition. Like, hit the green. Get your $1 million, right? I don't think anybody cares if you had an inside takeaway. Like, they're going to be high-fiving you for the $1 million you just won. So, like, that's the analogy I like to give people. Like, when the chips are down, I don't care what it looks like. Like, I hope it looks decent, hopefully. but like I care more where the ball ends up.
Yeah. I've taken comfort too, and like you search like PGA golf swing, and it's going to be like Rory, Adam Scott who come up, but then looking more into like John Rahm's swing, I've always liked more of an inside takeaway, more shallow, and just seeing the way he does it is like, okay, it's okay to have a little different swing. And
Totally.
like, it doesn't have to look perfect.
Always has to be function over aesthetics. Like we could sit there with Nelly Corda on one side of the screen and you on the other, and we could play picture match all day. But does that actually help you? That's the question you got to ask yourself. And if you're changing something, is it helping you produce better or more consistent impact positions? Because if it doesn't, it might be a waste of time. Yeah. That's how I feel.
Any personal favorite rounds, whether that's college or outside of that?
I have some
or courses, even either way.
I have some favorite rounds that I played. I won Player of the Year, GPAC Player of the Year, my freshman year, and of course you win it once as a freshman, and everyone's like, "Oh, he better win it again." At least that's what I thought. How do you win it as a freshman and not win it again? So my senior year, I wanted to win GPAC individually and with the team, but so badly. And I remember final round, Woodland Hills, Eagle, Nebraska, middle of nowhere, right? It's blowing 30 mile an hour like it always does in the Midwest. And I got to hole 10 and I was 2 strokes behind the leader still. And I remember every shot from that back nine, like every single one of them. And my goal was to shoot 2 under on that side, because if he was going to beat me, I wanted him to have to shoot even par or better. Right. So that round comes to mind just because I remember every shot on the back nine. And then the other one was the 2016 Northwest AM, which is where I had my lowest round. I had my best day in golf probably ever. I went into that tournament. So the Northwest AM is in Spencer, and it's the largest amateur golf event, I think, in the country. It's like 360 players. So it's ridiculous, right? And you've got guys from North Texas, Iowa State, University of Minnesota, South Dakota State, like big guns, right? I'm just hoping to make the cut and be like, oh, look, I beat that guy from Nebraska who is on their JV team. Like I was hoping to like beat one guy. I could be like, oh, see that? Like I'm not that bad. So I get there and I barely make the cut. So they do a 36 hole cut. And if you make that cut, if you're like top 25 or whatever, you get to play 36 holes the last day. I'm like the last one in, maybe T21 or something like that. And the leader is 11 strokes ahead of me. And I'm like, I remember telling my dad, who was going to drive me there and caddy and all this stuff for the whole day, like I had to play 36 holes. I'm 11 strokes back. I was like, should we just stay home? Like it's supposed to be 90. We could go to the lake. Like we could do all. He's like, no, you made the cut. Let's go. Of course, I'm the first one that tees off. 6 a.m. We leave at 4:30. It's miserable experience. I'd snap hooked every ball on the range. Like I didn't want to be there. I was going to shoot 80. Anyway, I get to the first tee, and I remember something Rod had told me about if I was seeing the ball go left, something I needed to try. And so on the first tee, I hit it like 60 yards to the right. And I was like, yes, I figured it out. I'm not going to hit it left anymore. So anyway, best round I've ever played. I made 2 eagles. I shot 8 under par, 64. And I remember vividly being like, wow, maybe I'll be like top 15 or top 10 now. And I get done, and I'm sitting there like downing a hot dog or something because I got to go back in 15 minutes and play again. And they were like, yeah, he'll be in the last group. And I go, whoa, what? So I guess, I shot 8 under, the leader struggled, and I had a 1-shot lead going into the final round. So it was like this massive dynamic change. I was like, hold on, I'm leading? So, all the carts come out and they follow you for the whole back nine, all the Spencer Country Club members, all the people that, my teammates, my coach, everybody was there watching me. And I'll just never forget how fun it was to hit 70 shots with at least like 50 carts, 80 carts just surrounding you, right? It's like they would surround the green, and I'd be like, this is great. If I miss the green, it's just going to bounce off a cart and go back to the green. This is awesome. So that is absolutely the most memorable round, or at least day in golf that I've ever had, because it was unexpected. And I was known as the guy. So that was I was going into sophomore year. It was like August of 2016. So I was going into sophomore year. I was known as the guy who could not shoot under par. And if he did shoot under par, it was 1 under. I was like the guy who couldn't shoot more than 1 under. Like that was his best he was ever going to do. And I just remember breaking through in a massive way that day where just everything went right. It was so fun. I still remember every shot 10 years later.
Do you like the aspect of competing against other people more, or competing with yourself more?
Honestly, I think competing with yourself is more measurable. So like if you watch, like Justin Thomas always posts his PGA Tour goals. I don't know if you guys ever see those, but he always posts his goals on social media. And it's like so hard to say, I want to win the US Open, because guess what? If Bryson plays really good, like he's going to hit it so much farther than everyone else. He's probably going to beat you. Or if Rory has a great week putting, or if Scotty Scheffler has a great week putting, you can play as good as you want. Like he's going to beat you. So the goals wise, right? If they're something you can control, or if you're competing more against yourself, like, okay, I want to go from, I was 46th in strokes gained putting, I want to be top 25 this year. That is a more realistic goal in my mind, because you could go play the best you've ever have at the US Open, but if someone who's more talented than you plays better, you're not going to meet that goal of winning the US Open. So look, there's nothing better than beating someone you want to beat. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of like measuring your success, it's probably best to test yourself against yourself.
Do you use a ton of different metrics for yourself and for people you work with?
People I work with, yes. I don't care enough about myself, my own game anymore to track that stuff. But yeah, high-level players all the time, we're tracking anything and everything that can get them 1% better. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the strokes gained metric, right? But it's like, you hit a ball 240 in the fairway versus 300 yards in the rough. Which one is more valuable for a golfer? And a lot of studies are showing like the longer the better usually. But so we always track that. So that way, I just think every golfer has such an emotional tie to something. So like for me, it's driving. Like I know I hit the ball far enough. I could never drive it straight enough. So I always, if anyone asks me about my game, I'm always like, oh yeah, if I could hit fairways, I'd be awesome. But if you look at my stats, it's probably going to tell you my putting sucks. But I just don't care that much about my putting, right? Like it's just not as fun to me. So I think we have this emotional attachment to one area of the game, and it can skew our perspective of what I need to work on. And that's where the like stat tracking is just so important. It'd be like asking Steph Curry what he needs to work on. Like he's pretty good at threes, but he might say, oh, I shot 44% last year. I need to shoot 46% this year from three. It's like, well, Steph, maybe if you got to the rim more and had more chance to shoot free throws, you'd score more. You know what I mean? So we all have this emotional attachment to our game, and I think that can skew. So I like stat tracking, mostly for my players, though, not for me.
What tools do you use outside of like video analysis and like strokes gained for people you give lessons to, and just to help the people improve?
Yeah, it depends on the player. Like a lot of times, I love video because like video just doesn't lie. So like
right,
the video, like they might say the camera puts on, I've heard people say the camera puts on 10 pounds, right? Well, it doesn't make you come over the top. Like if that happened on video, that you did that, no one else did that. So I like video. That's probably my most used one. And then anything that measures the golf club or the golf ball. So TrackMan is something, it's a launch monitor that I've used in probably every lesson for a year. I don't use it the whole time, but it can kind of confirm what's going on. So it'll tell you as much data as you want to know. It's like a $26,000 unit. So it's ridiculous. Like it's the gold standard of anything. You could buy a car with that money, right? But it'll tell you anything. So like basically the numbers I like to have people focus on is the path their club moves into the ball, whether it's moving down, level, or up when it hits the ball. And then depending on who they are and how they visualize and learn, the club face angle. So those are really like, you can have weird swings, but if you have a good club path, a good club face at impact, and you hit the ground in the right spot, does it really matter what the rest of it looks like? I mean, of course it does to a degree, but that's the only thing the golf ball cares about. So as a coach to the average golfer, that's really all I care about. I know you guys aren't going to go practice for 10 hours a week. I wish you would, but you're not going to. So if I get your club path to move into the ball pretty straight, we can get your club face to be pretty square and make sure you're hitting the ball before the ground, which is probably the most common mistake people make. You're going to be okay. You might be a little left occasionally, a little right occasionally, but you're going to hit the ball solid enough to like be by the green in regulation all the time and at least have fun. Airborne and forward. That's what I say to newer golfers. Can we get it airborne and forward?
I like that.
For the in-person versus online, obviously video, great tool for online. What are some different ways you approach training for those two?
Yeah, in person is like, there's no substitute for in person. I can like, if they let me, touch their shoulder, push them around, move them around, be like, okay, this, they'll be like, oh, I didn't know that's what you meant. Online is great because it never goes away. So if we did a lesson 6 months later, you're like, God, I don't know what's going on. You can go back and rewatch that lesson and be like, oh, I forgot completely about that drill that he wanted me to do or whatever, right? So that's where I think the big differences are. Now, of course, online can't substitute in person, but what a lot of people do is like they'll come see me in person and then we'll follow up with online a few times and then they'll come see me in person again. And it's just a nice way to make sure we're not taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step forward, 2 steps forward. So we're never backtracking because you don't have that line of communication or that verification or that feedback. It's always there. And that's the world we're in. In terms of like how the lessons are different, honestly, they're not that different. I am giving very much the same information. The only thing I think is better about in person is I make people like, it makes them really accountable. So for example, like I had one of these today. Someone takes the club back and their elbows separate a lot and their trail arm like goes like this, right? I go, hey, like we don't want that for XYZ reasons. The next video you send me, put a balloon between your elbows. And when you get to the top, try to pop the balloon with your trail arm and then swing down and send me that video. Do it with no ball because I don't care if you hit the ball or not. I just want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. And so like if I said that on the lesson tee, guess what the guy's going to do? He's going to be like, oh, okay, I get it. He's not going to put the ball between his arm or the balloon between his arms. He's going to rake the ball and he's going to make a swing and he's going to be like, was that better? And it's going to look the same, I promise, because everyone thinks they make a change, but they don't. And we're going to basically waste time going through that process. Whereas the person who's online, they're like, oh, shoot, my assignment from Coach Justin is to get a balloon, blow it up, and try to pop it right here. Okay. And then they send me that video and they'll be like, I can't believe how hard that was. That's the point. Like, obviously you're doing something different now. That's a great thing. So anyway, it kind of holds them accountable. And then the best part about it is if they make a swing and it looks like no different, they're afraid to send it to me because I'll be like, is this the same one you sent last week? Like, jokingly, but they'll be like, oh, you're right. That doesn't look any different. Hold on. I'll get you a new one. So then they learn to coach themselves a little bit and they don't need me as much, which is the goal. I love helping. I'll help as much as they need me to, but I don't need them to need me every day. So that way they can kind of become a little bit more educated, at least about their own swing, their own tendencies, their own flaws, and start to like at least have a way to start identifying, diagnosing, and then kind of fixing those issues. I like that about online a lot.
With how the game has kind of evolved with Rory hitting it miles, Bryson hitting it miles, have you incorporated like speed training? Is that part of golf lessons as well? Or is there
Totally
like weight training that's part of it? I'm curious.
Yeah.
Like that dynamic of the game evolving.
Yeah, totally. I think for someone who's serious about it, like I would say I know enough to be dangerous about like the body and about training and stuff like that, but I'm not an expert at that. So I have colleagues up here in Minneapolis. Like I know 3 awesome trainers that if you wanted to gain 10 mile an hour or if you wanted your body to feel better, like I'd send you to them and then I'd ask for a report back. Hey, what are you guys doing and why? And then just verify that what I'm doing with them kind of works in conjunction with what they're doing with their trainer. That's kind of step 1. Now, if someone's like, oh, I can't go to a trainer, like, what do you recommend? Then I have protocol for that. But like, I'm not an expert at that side. I just have a little bit of knowledge. Like, I kind of understand the different muscle types and what would be good to train and what would not be good to train and stuff like that. As far as speed training goes, I use Ripstick as they're a local. My friend Luke Benoit is the owner of the company. He's the teaching pro at Interlochen, which is in Minneapolis as well. He designed the company and it's amazing. It's one stick. It changes weights and basically as a protocol online, if you don't gain 10% distance, I think in 6 weeks, he'll give you your money back, or he'll give you free lessons, or I don't know what he does, but like seriously, I've seen that help so many people. So it's kind of the science of overspeed and underspeed training. So, when we want to get stronger, we lift really heavy. So there's a way to make the weighted stick, heavier than a driver. And then when sprinters want to get faster, what do? They run downhill. And so that's underspeed, I think. Overweight and overspeed. I don't know the words. I just know how it works. But like you can take weight off, and then that makes you like swing. It helps you learn how to swing faster. So if you don't practice swinging fast, you're never going to. And so, yes, I absolutely incorporate speed training. That's like the lowest hanging fruit for most bad golfers. Like, yeah, of course, I don't want you to just, instead of hitting it 200 and out of bounds, hitting it 250 and out of bounds. That doesn't work.
Right.
But I think I read it was a stat. The average 10 handicap, if they gained 20 yards, I don't want to misquote it, so this is probably wrong. I think it was 2.1 shots a round. If they gained 20 yards, a 10 handicap would shoot about 2 strokes lower on average every single round. You add that up throughout the year, that's a massive difference. So if you're a 10 handicap and above and you don't hit the ball super far, it's probably worth looking into, and ripstick would be one of my favorites for it.
Is that one of those things where you're just working on distance and not necessarily trying to hit it straight while you're doing that? Is that just like,
yeah, so
it's
it's not a club. It's actually a weighted stick that does not have a club head. So it makes a nice whoosh sound. So you can kind of understand how loud was the swoosh and how fast you swung it. But I think that's a great point. It doesn't do any good. Like you said, to just swing as fast as possible and miss the ball. Right. So what I'll have people do is we do ripstick training, right? And that just raises their ceiling and their floor at the same time. So if you start using speed training and you're cruising at 100, but you can get it to 103, well, then by doing speed training, I'm hoping that you start to cruise at 106, but when you chill out, it's like 103, but you can push it to 109. So that's kind of the idea. You got to raise your floor so that when you go to the golf course and you're just trying to hit the fairway, your cruising speed is higher. That's all I really care about. Is it cool if you can get to 110 or 120 or 130? Of course. Well, what's your gamer speed? Like when it's a tight hole and there's water left, trees right, like what's that speed? Because you don't really care if it's 290 or 297 in that scenario that you hit your driver. You want to make sure you find your ball. But still, from a strokes gain perspective, 290 to 297 makes a difference. So that's where I care about your cruising speed more than anything. So I'll have people play a game on TrackMan called 3 Strikes. So I'll just put their club head speed up and I'll say, okay, give me a cruising speed, and it'll be 93. Now they get 3 strikes. They got to be above 93 and then set a new base. So the next swing they make, let's say it's 94. Then the next swing they make is 93.8. That's strike 1. So every time they get something lower than their previous, it's a strike. Once you get 3 strikes, you're probably too tired to continue anyway. But that's a good way to be like, okay, we're going to try and hit it solid. We're going to try to hit it far. This is like on course, but I'm going to keep trying to build your speed as we go and see how far is too far to be comfortable. Because once they start hitting it off the planet, missing the club face, then it's usually like time to dial it back and cruise a little more rather than push it.
Do you do much with like foot pressure and force plate stuff?
Well, that's on my list. I know how important they are, and especially for just like club head speed, they're massively important for like. It's crazy. Like we just had a conference at the PGA show where a bunch of it's called Open Forum, so it's like the Super Bowl for golf instruction, and a bunch of like the titans of the golf industry, the smartest people, they get on stage, and like not gonna lie, they just argue. Like they argue about what's right and wrong, and do force plates matter or not, and all this stuff, but. It made me realize like you cannot measure what you can't see. So like, for example, they gave the example of like, if someone sways off the ball too much, like you would never know how they're swaying unless you could measure how their feet are moving into the ground. So you could say, oh, well, if you're swaying, like you need your trail foot to push you this way, but their trail foot might be pushing them that way. You just can't see it. It's just the other leg is pushing the other way twice as hard. So there's just so much that we can't see, in my opinion, that makes force plates important. It's on my list of things to buy. I'm hoping the club that I'm at, we have everything. It's the best. It's Spring Hill. So I think they're interested in getting some, and I would love to know. The thing you can't do with them, though, is like overwhelm the student. So, here's all your TrackMan numbers from a $25,000 machine. Here's the video. and then here's all your force plate data. Your vertical torque is too low. We need to, change the moment arm, and we got to get your lateral force better, and your sagittal plane torque is terrible. Like what? Right? They're looking at the video like, dang, I shouldn't eat that hot dog at noon. Like that's the death of like. So I got to be super careful about information overload. But I think what's great would be for me to see that information and be like, you know what, Mrs. Havacamp, we got to push a little harder with this leg when we take the club back. Like that would be useful for her, not, hey, your lateral force from your trail foot is insufficient or whatever. That's the goal, right? I got to take the complex information and try to make it as simple as I can so they can apply it. So I haven't used them, but they're on my list. That's like top of my list. The next thing I need is force plates.
I'd love to see the force plates on Scheffler's slide. That would be something.
Yeah.
About
that.
I'm curious, like driver swing versus iron swing. Do you differentiate between those two? I've always struggled to know like if they're similar enough where you keep them the same, or you like separate them completely, like hitting up on a driver versus hitting down on an iron, stuff like that. I've always been curious about.
Like, great question. I want to give a good example. I just don't know if I can. I'll do my best. So the answer is, look, I think one, swing is hard, right? It's hard enough. So I try not to make people feel like there's a ton of differences, but unfortunately there are. So obviously with an iron, the ball is on the ground. The number one goal is to hit the ball before you hit the ground, right? And so there's things you need to do probably a little bit differently to ensure that happens versus a driver where we know from strokes gained that distance is fairly important. And if you want to drive the ball far, probably not the best to hit down on the driver. It can work. Of course, anything can work. But if you're a 15 handicap and you drive it 180, it'd be worth learning how to hit up on the ball to hit it 210 or 205, whatever. So how the club comes into the ball is absolutely different. Now, the good news is you can get a lot of this stuff for free at impact or at setup, the changes. So what do I mean by that? Well, ball position, right? Obviously with a driver, we've all been told, slide that ball position a little bit more forward. Another thing I like to see people do is make sure that their shoulders are tilted a little bit more. Even their eyes are tilted a little bit more so that the lead side is higher, trail side is lower, because your hands will tend to follow your eyes and your shoulders. So that will help you bring the hand path up, bring the driver head up through the ball. All else equal, usually helps the player hit more up on a ball. Now, this is into the weeds, so hang in there. If I can explain this well on Zoom, I can explain it well like anywhere. So there is it's called like the 10-degree problem in golf instruction. So when you're hitting down on an iron, okay, there is a club path that is going to be calculated based on the club moving down as well. So when I swing a golf club, if this is the golf club, when I swing it back, it's moving up and back, right? It's going that way. So it's not just going up. It's not just going back. It's doing both. So when it comes down, it does the same thing. So you have to think when the club is moving down, it's also moving that way a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit, right? So if you took this club and you swung it straight at the target, and the ball was here, well, at this moment, that club is moving that way a little bit, right? So that club path is actually moving inside out or to right field at the moment, right? Then it's going to come down, it's going to hit the ball. And then what's it going to do? It's going to move up and to the left. So it's going to start moving left again. So the problem is if you were to take the swing, okay, and you were to just change where the ball is in that swing, you're going to have a different club path with every club. And that's going to make the ball curve different. It's going to make the club face come through different. And so really the more you hit down on it, the more inside out your path will be. And the more you hit up on it, the more outside in your path would be, because that club is now starting to move back up and to the left, right? First of all, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So we have this problem with irons. We're supposed to hit the ball, then the ground. Well, then the ball better be back here somewhere. And so when you measure it all out, it's about 10 degrees different. So if you're hitting like a sand wedge or a lob wedge off the ground, where you're hitting the club, and like if you kept everything like the same, like I'm talking about on the same plane, you'd need to be like 6 degrees down and 6 degrees inside out. And then when you're on the driver, it's all the way up here. It's about a 10-degree difference. If the ball's where it's supposed to be, it's about 4 degrees up and 4 degrees to the left. So you could make the same swing, And if the ball's in a different spot and you got a different club, you're going to hit a draw with your wedges and you're going to fade your driver. And everyone's going to be like, my swing changes when I hit driver. It doesn't. It's just the physics is super complicated and difficult. So instead of worrying about that, like most golfers are sitting there scratching their head right now, like, oh my God, what did he just say? I would just say you're probably going to be better at drawing your irons and fading your driver. Understand that physics, no need to fight it. Like, unless you're a tour player trying to make sure you can work it both ways, I would just say make sure you're able to hit the ground after the ball with your irons. And then with driver, if we could do those little setup things I talked about, most of the time that's going to help you. But just don't be afraid if your driver curves a little different than your irons, because that's kind of built in with how the geometry works. That was a terrible answer.
So you hit on
That was good.
the off-season stuff, or like winter focusing more on mechanics when it's more so sessions like during the season. What do those look like? Is it more like more of the skill component? Is it ball flight? What do those look like?
Yeah, awesome question. So I wouldn't say I don't teach any mechanics during the summer. I'll still do some. Like, hey, especially like at setup, like, oh my gosh, your shoulders have gotten way open. Like, we got to fix that. So I'll do some of that stuff, but I try to be the least invasive as possible. So, like, for example, like the most common thing, people hit it to the right. Okay. So the first thing I'll do is be like, okay, what in our setup like could help us not do that? It could be your arm positioning, your grip, maybe your club face is just set up open at setup, right? So if I can go through those boxes, like I feel like that's the least invasive because they're not moving. They don't have to think about a darn thing to do different. Just before you hit this ball, you have all this time in the world, right? We got minutes between shots. You can remember this as you step in, do X, Y, Z to make sure the ball doesn't go to the right. Okay. Other than that, I like to focus a lot on the skill development side and the performance side. So once we can kind of, I call it like identifying and controlling your bias. So if someone comes in and, maybe they got a good swing, maybe they don't. But in the middle of July, what are they looking for? Well, they just want to play better. So if they're coming through the golf ball and like 6 out of 10 are going, just say off the toe, well, then I'll look through the swing and say, what could be causing that? And does this player have the skill to fix that problem? So, for example, we might do a drill where I have them alternate hitting the toe and then the heel, and then the toe and then the heel, and then the toe and then the heel, and then switch clubs and go toe, heel, toe, heel. And once they feel like they've calibrated that and they can do that, I'll ask them, hey, here's your 6 iron. Let's hit the middle. And so what's interesting is to do that enough, especially with young golfers. I've got a kid now we started doing that 2 years ago. If I ask him to hit it, so TrackMan has an impact feature. It'll tell you exactly where you hit it. If I say, hey, hit this 8 millimeters off the heel, he can do it. How about 11 millimeters off the toe? Bang, he can do it. I go, how about 1 millimeter on the toe side of center? Bang, he can do it. And so anytime I give him anything to work on, it takes him like 2 swings to hit the middle of the face with the new move. Like, because he is so skilled at hitting the middle of the face. So I'll do a lot of that in the summer, like building skills, fixing biases. Like if you're snap hooking everything, of course I'm going to change something. That's terrible. Like you can't play golf like that. So we'll do some of that. And then I try to get them into like a performance mindset too. So, everyone gets to the driving range and what do? They start smacking 7 irons, and like you get to hit maybe 3 7 irons in a round of golf. So I'll have them hit, a driver between those trees and then a sand wedge at that pin, but you can't go left of it. So aim a little right of it. And then a 5 iron off a tee because it's par 3, can't be short of this green, hit it there. And I make them go through their routine. And basically what that does is it preps them for the wild, right? It preps them for being out on the golf course. So if they can take what they've applied in the first half of the lesson, maybe it was the setup, maybe it was the grip, whatever, and they can start to apply that in a performance like mindset, then I feel good when they walk away. If they're still struggling with it, we might spend more time on the mechanics. But my preference is to do more skill building, more performance-based kind of, stuff during the season because I see that help the golfer more, but I don't neglect mechanics. I want to make sure they're still in a good spot. So like a lot of times it's just going back to what we did in February. It's like, oh, how we worked on that takeaway. It's starting to kind of go back to what you like. Let's just have a little bit of mindfulness about that takeaway and you should be good. So there's some stuff like that too.
You ever focus on other aspects of the game in your sessions, like short game, putting?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it
all the time. You can't neglect
else?
that. Yeah, for sure. All the time. And I would like to do more short game lessons. It's just, unfortunately, right, I serve the golfer. They're paying for the lesson, so I kind of got to give them what they want. But if it was up to me, we'd spend 60% of the time probably chipping and putting, right? That's where a lot of the strokes are. So Spring Hill has a beautiful short game facility, and I love teaching chipping because it's not something you have to be big, strong, and fast. Like anyone can be good at chipping. Anyone can swing the club 14 mile an hour and be good at chipping it close to the hole. So love teaching chipping, love bunker play. I'll be completely honest with everyone listening. I know enough about putting. I'm not in love with it. I don't love to teach putting. I'll tell a quick story about putting if people are interested. So the guy I was mentioning earlier that owns Ripstick, his name is Luke Benoit, and I might get the country wrong. I always get it wrong. I think he taught golf for a few months in a country called Ghana. Is that a country?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It is.
So he got to teach these two groups of kids, and they were all the same age. They'd all never golfed before, and they had this crummy green with like cracked golf balls or whatever they had. But anyway, he had like 20 kids, and there was 10 in the first session, 10 in the second session. And so he used it as an experiment. Luke has his PhD in motor learning, so he's always looking for a way to do research, which I respect the heck out of. He took the first 10 kids, and he was like, all right, kids, this is how you hold the putter. Your eyes are supposed to be like right over the ball. Your elbows go here. And then he made like gates for their putter. So like learning a perfect stroke, a perfect setup. And he basically had them work on the stroke over and over and over again. And so for 6 weeks, I think he said, they worked on their stroke and they had like perfect putting strokes, right? The second group, there's 10 kids, right? They're all the same age ranges. He goes, all right, guys, you hold this end and you hit it with this end. Let's go play games. And so they would play games against each other. And so he said there were kids like holding it like this and side saddle and left hand down by like all kinds of things you could imagine. Nothing orthodox about it, right? Putting strokes, making big loops, slicing across it, hooking it, everything, aiming way offline, all this stuff. And so for 6 weeks, they played games against each other. And so at the end of the 6 weeks, he took them on the final week and he tested them against each other. And the second group kicked the crap out of the first group, just demolished them. And so what he learned, what his like message to me was, and I'm trying to learn from everyone I can, was like, look, your putting stroke, like it matters. Don't get me wrong, but like at a certain point, if you want to be a really good putter, you probably need to putt like a kid. Like there's the hole. It looks like it's going to go that way. Putt it. Like at some point, there's probably some of that needs to happen. He said there was this one kid who terrible looking stroke, but even from like 20 feet, as soon as he hit the ball, he would run up to the hole and put his hand in the cup because he knew it was going to fall into his hand. Like he was unbelievable. And he'd never said a word about what to do. So I think we can get paralyzed by putting. And I think that's why I don't necessarily love teaching the mechanics side of it because I just don't know for sure if it's helping them. I hope it does, but I don't know for sure. Whereas the golf swing side, I feel like it's a little bit different. So there's a fun story on putting.
I love it.
Talk about like the impact of club fitting and like the progress or the need for club fitting to take that next step, or if you think it's worth it. I'm curious what you're thinking.
Totally, especially with like people that are trying to hit the ball farther. Like if you're swinging a driver that maybe has a shaft that's not fit well for you, the loft of the driver could be off. Even like they can even like look at your ball flight and where you tend to strike the ball on the face, and they can move the center of gravity. So like, for example, if you're someone who always hits it on the toe, they can move the center of gravity so that when you hit the toe, it acts like a middle of the face strike. So like, there's just so many benefits. I would say with irons too, there's like how that club interacts with the ground is so important just for like feedback, right? Sometimes you hit it and like you hit the ball okay, but like the club maybe twisted in your hand, or the divot was like really deep in the toe side and really shallow on the others, and you're like, man, that just didn't feel right? So in terms of like ball flight and improvement, I think the metrics that you're getting with when the ball takes off, like club fitters can pick up on that quickly and get you to do it better, like immediately with different equipment. And then like from an iron standpoint, having the right length, having the right lie angle, they can even look at like how you come into impact and try to get your launch and spin similar with driver in a usable spot. So I think it's really important. I have a bad habit of seeing a golf swing maybe with a swing flaw and being like, oh, before he gets fit, fix that swing flaw. Well, I mean, that could be how many months does that golfer have to suffer like before he's at? So if you're worried about getting fit, like, look, I promise it's going to do you more good than harm to do it now. You don't have to fix your swing first. Okay. It's really not going to be probably that different anyway. But for the vast majority of golfers, it would be beneficial. Just don't wait until you feel like you've fixed it or you're hitting it good. Go let them help you now so you can hit it good sooner.
When did you start with the social media side of putting stuff out there, and what's that been like for you?
Oh man, I think I started social media when we moved back from Carolina Country Club. Actually, that whole started. So I was down at the PGA show literally yesterday. I was on a panel about this social media, and what I told the crowd was when I started that, it was literally like I had heard a conversation or a report, I think from the USGA and RNA, that the world, like the average world golf handicap index, um, had not changed in the last 10 years. It was like the average index was like 16.2 or something like that. And it just the same. So like we've gotten better drivers, better equipment, video, track, like all these things that are supposed to be making golfers better, and nothing has helped, right? We're still as bad as we were. So the social media I started because I'm like, I wonder if I can someday, if I post every day for 60 years, can I move that by point one? Like, if I could just get one golfer, one index point, like better on their gin, like, is that worth it? And I thought, yeah, that is worth it. So I started it. I started posting. I was terrible at it. If you go back at my old posts, they're embarrassing. But I slowly got better at it, and I figured out what people like to see and what they don't like to see. And I started trying to make more of what they like. And eventually, like I didn't have like one video go crazy. I had get a couple million, but it's been like a slow burn kind of to get a ton of followers. So it was probably 4 years ago now. And it's just been kind of a steady climb. I really think the first summer I took it seriously, I got a big jump, and then it's kind of been a steady climb since. But that's where it started, and now it's been great because I can use it as like an education tool. So like if I post something about the golf swing, like of course there's like trolls that'll say, wrong, whatever, right? But also other coaches see that, and they can either agree with me or disagree with me. So either affirm what I thought was true, or they can say, as long as they're respectful, which 99.9% of them are, they come in and they say, hey man, I get what you're trying to say, but I would make sure you don't leave this out. And oh yeah, like that makes perfect sense. So it's an educational opportunity for me too. So I'm always using it more as an education tool, selfishly, to learn a little bit more. But it really started with that goal of, could I move that 16.2 to 16.1 in 60 years? Would that have anything to do with me? Maybe not, but I was hopeful.
Yeah, I like that aspect of it, like kind of a hidden benefit, like forces you to articulate what you know, and in a way that makes sense, and like you feel
So the
like
vast
works,
majority, to the guy who's like, I shouldn't have ate that hot dog when he sees the video, right? Like that's who you're trying to explain this stuff to. You got to be conscious of that.
Yeah. You've been tagged in a few. You've helped like Sauce Gardner, right?
That was cool.
Kyle Rudolph. Who else have you been giving some swing tips to?
Randall McDaniel, old Viking. I've got some other Vikings in the front office who I have to keep nameless at the moment. Awesome. Like I'm a huge Vikings fan. So anytime like you could get the oldest no-name tight end from Minnesota back in the 70s, and if you walked in, I'd be like, oh my gosh. So a lot of cool people at Spring Hill, and a lot of cool people that have walked onto the lesson tee. Trying to think if there was anyone else that the viewers might know that I've helped. I mean, online, Sauce Gardner, Caitlin Clark. They have me do not tips, but swing analysis for, Bryson and Nelly Corda and all those people. But yeah, Sauce actually responded to that. The PGA posted my thing, and that thing got like 10 million views in 36 hours. It was ridiculous. But Sauce was on like his 3-week golf kick, which I'm sure we'll have again this year. I hope. And then, they asked me to do the same thing with Caitlin Clark, but that one didn't do as well. I think it was in like October or November, and people just as interested in golf at that time of year. So that one didn't do as well, but Sauce is probably right up there, man.
That's sick.
It was cool.
Talk about Kraftygolf Studio. What the vision for that is. And what
Yeah.
you're looking to do with that.
I got the hoodie
Let's
on
go.
right here. Yeah, for sure.
Sick.
So there's a lot, like I'm sure you guys go to like golf simulators, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so you go there and you get a menu and you're eating and you got, pizza, grease on your hands and it's like wipe it up, beer, ball game, here we go. So that's not this. There's plenty of those in Minneapolis. People will be just fine. This is a place where you walk in the doors and it's like impossible not to get better at golf. That's it. So 3 TrackMan bays indoors with 3 cameras in each bay. So no excuse to not know what your swing looks like, what your flaws are, whatnot. There's also Sportsbox 3D in the bays. So what does that mean? Well, it's a 3D motion measurement system. So you hit a ball and it says, I had 88 degrees of shoulder turn, 38 degrees of hip turn. My left elbow bent 10 degrees. I swayed off the ball 2 inches. I had 36 degrees of tilt, 31 degrees of forward bend, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff that for the average golfer is like information overload. But the great thing is, this is why it's awesome. You can hit a ball. It'll say, here's your numbers. And you can hit assessment. And it'll say, you know what? Here's the 3 things I would work on if I was you. And it would say, you early released the club in the downswing. Do you want to work on that? And you can hit yes. And a screen will come up with your video on one side and then the one data tile on the other. And it'll have a range of green, yellow, and red. It'll be like, if you're in the green, you did a much better job. And it'll give you different cues and drills and tips to try to improve that number. So you really focus them on one flaw. You get immediate feedback for it. And like I said, I don't know how you could not get better if literally you were being told, oh, you didn't turn your hips enough in the backswing. Let's work on that. And then the next video, it's, oh, that you went from 32 degrees to 38 degrees. Really good. You're almost there. Try to get to 45. And then, you get to 45 and it shows up green and it says, let's see how many in a row you can do. And then it's like, okay, do you want to work on something else? And it says, oh yeah, your left arm was bending 22 degrees in the backswing. Let's try to get it less than 5, whatever it is. Okay. But this is giving you immediate feedback with video right next to it, ball flight on the screen. I don't know how someone could not get better. In addition to that, I've got a ton of a room full of training aids, a small putting green, and I've got a video, like a kiosk of every social media drill I've ever posted, and I've got it organized by swing flaw. So if you're in there, you're on the video, you keep seeing your chicken wing, you can go in there, search tags, chicken wing, and it'll show all the videos about chicken wing. You can start trying to improve. So I will be at Spring Hill all the time. There's a 24/7 facility, key fob access. Like I won't be there all the time, but that kiosk gives you a resource to start fixing your flaws like right away. So literally don't know how you don't get better when you walk. If you walk in with, even with your headphones in and like you don't care, I don't know how you would get worse. So I'm excited about that. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
If you guys are up in Minnesota, you got to come check it out.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that open soon or is that already open or what?
Very soon. I just had a meeting with the construction team this morning and I can't give a hard date because there's a few people, they're not sure when they'll show up, but within the next 30, I'm going to say 20 to 40 days, it's going to be open. So I'm
awesome.
pumped. There's been
That's awesome, dude. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks. I need it. It's I'm a golf instructor, right? So people are always asking me like, what's it like to be a new business owner? And I'm like I don't know what I'm doing. I got a phone call the other day from the fire department. They were like, hey, you got to get us a key. I go, why? They go, in case there's a fire. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, okay. So I can do, so there's been 100 things that I was not prepared for. And then people will be like, what's it like to be an influencer? And I'm like, I am not an influencer. Like I literally am a golf coach that posts some silly tips. And for some reason people follow those. So I do try to like, yeah, I got the social media. Yeah, I got the studio. But really that studio is more for, it's like off the instruction side. Like I just want a place where people can show up. Obviously it's going to be a great place for me to give lessons. I can't wait for that. But also just like it goes back to that 0.1, man. Can I get Plymouth, Minnesota 0.1 handicap points better, right? Like if I can, that's worth it. So I'm just trying to find unique ways to do that because I'm disappointed that that's not moving down because I think if that's going down, golf is growing and getting better and it's just not. at the moment. So yeah, you guys got to come check the place out. It's gonna be sweet. I'm not going cheap on any of it. It's gonna be high quality. It's gonna be a sick place when you walk in.
Love it. Anything else exciting or any other goals coming up where you want to take this thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, if it does well and people like it, I mean, another location, maybe Orange City's the next location. Who knows? No,
There you go.
yeah, more locations would be cool. It's just like how many people can I help, and that's to the online lessons too, right? Like I gave a guy from New Zealand a lesson today because online lessons just like shrink the world. So I'd like to continue growing that online side because, like I said, it holds the player accountable. I think they learn more. They can go back and watch it, and then also some people improve faster online, and maybe it's because it forces them to do what I say, or it just like forces them to look at their own video, right? But I see people online get better really fast, and it's actually like it's crazy to me. So if I'm trying to move that index 0.1, like I think online lessons is a great way because you don't have to hop in a plane or drive to come see me, right? And then maybe another location someday if that's on the docket. But as in terms of other things that I think would be cool this year, force plates. I want the force
Let's
plates.
go.
I want the force plates. So
I had them at my last job. I was down in Texas for a year, and we had a set of force plates. I
what
nerded out
kind?
so
Do you
much
remember
with
the
it.
brand name?
Hawken Dynamics.
Wow. Okay. Cool. Where were you in Texas?
UT Arlington.
Nice.
So I worked with the basketball team there, and so basketball had
Let's
exclusive
go.
access to it, and I definitely nerded out on it quite a bit. And
That's
it's hard
awesome.
to when you have a tool like that, it's hard not to
No,
I
it's
don't know,
just
just dive into it. And
yeah, it's so much data. And the interesting thing is too, like they came out a few years ago. I don't know, 5, 8 years. I don't know, but it was like all the golf coaches were like, "This is great." You know, in a few years, we'll know exactly what every force plate graph should look like. And it's 5 years later, and the only thing we've learned is we don't know anything. Like everyone's like, "Oh, like I think it's supposed to go this way," and he's supposed to, it's supposed to be, lateral movement, then rotational, then vertical. But then this was at the PGA show. Someone put up a thing of a guy doing it the complete opposite way, and he hits the ball farther than the other guy. And it's like, so we thought, when we got force play, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to teach people like how to have this perfect interaction with the ground. And all we've learned is that everyone does it different. Like, and then of course, who comes along? Scotty Scheffler. And it's like, well, we don't know what we're doing yet. So, and it's not like common. Like I feel like there's common knowledge in golf, and then there's stuff we're still learning. So like common knowledge would be, you guys are golf guys. Like if you get fit for a driver and you walk out and the average spin rate is 5,000, is that good? No, that's too much, right? But the whole world knows that now. 10 years ago, they didn't know that because we couldn't measure it, right? So I hope in 10 years we look back and we go, someone comes back to this podcast and like, Justin's an idiot for not knowing what force plate data was good, right? But that's where we are now. We don't know. I think we can find what's favorable and what's not favorable, but as far as like black and white, good and bad, we have no idea.
yeah,
But those are
especially
sweet.
different. Especially different approaches, like super analytical guys like Bryson, and I'm sure there's plenty of guys who are just John Daly style, just go out and rip it. So
I wonder if he's
I
ever
think
looked
it's-
at a force plate. It's unlikely,
No
right?
shot.
I mean, maybe he has. He can't. I mean, it's his profession, so he might have. But yeah, I'm sure Bryson looks at all that data like to a T, right? Almost paralysis by analysis. But obviously, it's not because he's got a great system for compartmentalizing it and then applying it. I mean, it's crazy how many. Like I read one time, he has like a system for his putting stroke, like how far to take it back. I'm just like, that's like Steph Curry
That's
knowing
insane.
how far back to bend his wrist based on if it's 31 feet, 33 feet, 35 feet. Like that's absurd, right? But I guess it works for him. So keep it up. Dude won the US Open.
Yeah. What do you think of the current state of the PGA? Like some of the things they're trying with that indoor league and just the live golf stuff. What are your just general thoughts on where they're at?
Yeah, and like the golf ball, right? That's coming.
Yeah.
Soon. They're gonna bring the golf ball back. We'll see. That's what they said.
Mhm.
To be honest, I mean, I want to say it's great, but I'm not turning it on as much as I used to. Right when you had all the best players in the world, once every other week or whatever they played. You had the memorial, the players, all those things. Like, it's not as good. It's not as interesting. Is it great for the guy who's maybe on the edge of having his tour card? It's probably a little better because you've got those guys that on the live tour that are not a factor in those events. So I would like to see a solution come sooner rather than later. I think the indoor stuff is cool, very cool, and I think probably won't see less of it moving forward because golf courses are getting bigger, harder to get to. They require more water and more funding to make it look nice, right? Everybody's hitting the ball 340 now. So indoor shrinks that enormously. And as Tiger has shown and Rory, you can make it pretty sweet inside, right? You can do all that stuff with the revolving green and the massive screen. Like, all that stuff's really cool. As a TrackMan guy, I think it would be 10x better if they had TrackMan in there because I don't know how. Like, I think Tiger hit a wedge like 20 yards over the green once, and he flushed it. Like, that's
Probably not.
I didn't know. Why are they not using it? That's crazy.
Because Tiger, I think, has a deal with Full Swing. I think that's their. But like, Tiger doesn't try to hit it 92 and hit it 112. Like, if he hits it well, like I could see him hit it at 99 or 88 or 84, but not 112. So like, that is like a big turnoff for me because like if it's missing that, what else is it missing? So TrackMan, it would be cool to see that in there. I don't think we will because I think Tiger like sponsors Full Swing or the other way around. I don't know, but I think that's cool. The golf ball will be very interesting. We've built these 8,000 yard courses because we're assuming everybody's going to drive it 350 in 10 years, and now they're saying, hold on a minute, let's dial that back a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see, like, are they going to make the amateur golfer hit it shorter too? Because, boy, that would. But then again, do you really want the amateurs and the pros playing different golf balls? Like, where do you cut that off? D1, D2, NAIA? Like, does Live Tour get to play the old ball and PGA Tour play the new? Like, it gets so messy. So honestly, I'm inclined to think they might not go through with it. They're just putting it up there to see what happens. But I don't know. It's also interesting from like the ball company side. I'm a Titleist staff member. They've got the best ball in golf. Like, they're always like 92 to 94% of the entire field at the PGA Tour. Only 6% play a different ball. But then, like, this is going to be a brand new golf ball. Like, Bridgestone could come in, Maxfly could come in, Costco could come in and have the best golf ball for all we know, right? We have no idea. So I think that's a little nervy for them too, and they're way smarter, so they'll figure it out. But I just think it's interesting. We're in a little bit of a limbo, I think. You got the PIP thing too. Like, Tiger doesn't post on social, and he's won the thing, 2 or 3 years in a row? It's like they got to find a better way for that too. So I think they've got some answers. I don't think we're far from getting over the bridge, but I would say right now it's in a little bit of a lull. I'm just not as excited to turn it on as I used to be. Like when Dustin Johnson and Jordan Spieth in 2015 were duking it out in a playoff. Like, I would cancel plans to go watch that. I was excited to watch that. And now it's like, it's just not the same.
Yeah. I will say it does make me like even more amped up for the majors when they finally do all square up.
True. That is fun. And I think there's a little bit of like, I think they want their own people to do well. Like, I don't think the PGA Tour guys want the live guys to do well. I don't think the live guys necessarily want a PGA Tour guy to win. So it's funny. I mean, yeah, it does make the major, but it does make the majors like that extra level of awesome again. That's true. Mm-hmm. It's just you don't get it as often, so it's more special.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Do you guys tune in? I mean, I could be in. Look, I spend 50 hours, 60 hours a week doing it, so I don't necessarily turn it on in my free time. But like, I'm curious, like golf fans, what do you guys do? You turn it on a lot?
I mean, I like doing some like daily fantasy lineups, so that keeps me engaged. So I love watching it, but I don't have always a guy to root for. So if it gets me a little more invested, I love tuning in and watching.
You can do like the betting. You can bet on pairings. Like, you can go, oh, Sung JM or Jordan Spieth. Jordan's winning today, and like you can follow that. I have friends that do that. Sports bet in Minnesota, so don't even go there.
Yeah. No, I agree with a lot of what you said. I wish they were all still, playing together every week, but money talks, and that's the way it goes.
I know. Unfortunately, that's just That's just how it is. Where are you guys located? All of you.
I'm in Iowa City, finished in PT school, so got a year left in Iowa City, and then who knows after that.
Go Hawks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm back in Iowa, but I was down south for a few years, Arkansas and Texas. So it was nice. My whole life not being able to, like, hit range sessions. I haven't always had a place to go to, so it's been nice to just work on the game in the off season a little more.
For
so,
sure. Do you guys have a sim
fun.
place that you go to right now? Any of you?
Nah.
No.
Mm-mm.
Dang.
Dream is to find a cheap version that I can just have for my own someday.
There you
But
go. Yeah.
we'll
Perfect.
see. We'll get there.
Have a thing in the garage or something.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah.
What
all
else
good.
you got? You got to have golf questions about your own
Jaden.
game.
Well, mine is basically driver. I tried to change. I've always grew up kind of a big hook, not a big hook, but a big draw.
Yeah.
And I could play it the whole time. It never got me into trouble because I knew what it was going to do all the time. And then like 2 or 3 years ago, I started hitting fades just because I thought I could control it better. It worked for maybe a month, and then all of a sudden I was just getting two-way misses. And it's kind of been the two-way miss ever since. So
you don't know what you're saying.
I'm curious
What's your
if you
handicap?
have handicap.
Yeah.
PT school's kind of ruined me golf wise, but it was
I'm just curious.
We're from an easy 9-hole course, so like if I'm playing our 9-hole, I'm shooting around par. But like Landsmere, I'd probably shoot 6 or 7 over.
Yeah.
Like consistently. But
You're solid. You're not one of the 22.
right, like
talking.
freshman year I was probably my best. I made it to state too.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
That was probably my peak. That was when I played the most golf.
Yeah, so you probably have. This is guessing. Like this is like I could
Right.
get
Haven't seen a
banned
swing or anything.
get banned in my industry for doing this. But like, if you,
Right.
it sounds like you were on one side of an extreme with your club pad
Right.
coming too far from the inside, and then you moved it too far the other way. And so
Right.
I think you probably need to find a middle ground. It'd be interesting to see what pieces are preventing you from being in the middle and seeing how simple that would be to fix. But I always like to remind people, if you look up the top 10 strokes gained driving guys and you look up their left miss percentage and their right miss percentage, it's about equal, every single one of them. So they're all missing 15% to the right and 16% to the left. So everybody does miss both ways. What would scare me is if you're seeing it curve both ways. Like one time I hit a pull draw and then it's a big slice. Or one time it's it starts a little right and duck hooks, and the next one starts a little right and fades. Like then we got a big problem because you can't guess where to aim if it's curving different every time. Like if you can have an idea which way it's going to curve and then just try to control where it starts, then you got a good chance. But if you're not able to know which way it's going to curve, it's like anxiety as soon as you step on the tee. It's like, oh my gosh, what could happen?
Because I feel like I got into like the John Rahm like bowed wrist and tried to just like
some of that,
kind of keep that the whole time, and then just try to get away from it. But then I still get it.
Just send me a
pretty
video.
handsy.
I'll look at it.
Yeah.
I'm curious now.
But
really interesting to see what you ended up. Do you have a video from old you when you drove it well with draws?
Oof, I'd have to dig, but I might.
Yeah. You should go look. See if send them to me, but you should go look. You might even be able to see like, oh my gosh, my grip was different. A lot of times those things change over time and we don't even know it.
Right.
So I'll always have, this is why I like video, especially in a lesson. I have video from every student, like from the first lesson. And then whenever they're hitting it well, I'll make sure we have a lot of video so we can always go back and say, what changed? If you're struggling, like, oh, look at the top of your backswing, the club face looks way different. Like that has to be why you're struggling. Let's get that back where you played really well. Usually not just me, but the player finds a ton of comfort in that because all of a sudden they think, oh, I'm going to go back to who I was. Like that's what I wanted. So at least us that as we get older, we get worse. Like that's comforting to hear. So check for that video. That could be important for you.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I sent my swing into you probably a year ago. You did one of your free story.
Did I really?
Story analysis. So
okay, save it.
What's that?
Did you screenshot it or anything?
I can check. But basically, like I was trying so hard to get steep to shallow. Like I tried everything.
really?
Like yeah, like so many different swing thoughts, and it was never ever comfortable. And I would it'd be like shanks, or did I say toe? Always heely.
Yeah.
So it'd be like occasional
Nice.
shanks or like
Yeah.
pushy, and you've had some videos that have spoke on it too, but just like it's okay to start more shallow. I feel like no matter what plane my backswing is, it's always a little more over top. So finally I was a little like, okay, if I just start super shallow and keep it shallow, then
Then the net.
then we're shallow on the downswing. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
So
funny. Yeah, I see.
I don't know. I'll see if I can find it, but
Yeah, see if you can. And I'd
Um,
like to see where you're at now. That's cool. That's a small world.
Brandon just hits it a long ways.
Yeah.
He just
Mine's
pounds the ball.
mine's more like, I think I've never done any video on my swing, and I've never had anyone help me on my swing. So
That's awesome.
I'm also.
it's all based off of feel, and so I usually can kind of correct the ball flight and keep the ball like. The biggest issue I have is like some of the longer, tougher courses when I have to hit driver because the hole's actually like a longer par 4.
Yeah.
Like those
Those are
having to make that switch instead of hitting a long driver somewhere around the green if I miss right or left, but actually having to
then
be in the
hit
fairway with a
Yeah.
280. Yeah. I can't quite do that consistently.
Yeah.
So I just get exposed when I play a higher level course. And so it's for me, it's more like consistency,
Yeah.
putting good shots together. I tend to like when I play a good course, like get really deep into the ground, like
Interesting.
pretty steep, take really big divots, almost to the point where like the ball is not even advancing sometimes. Like, and I think it's usually after I go after a driver and then I have to hit a wedge and then
That's
I don't
so
have
different.
the skill, I guess.
Yeah. So
Or-
try to do the opposite. Like if you're out there now, try to like, pretend you're on the top of the Empire State Building and you're on a glass floor. And if you hit the glass, you're going to fall through the glass, right? Because it's going to break.
yeah.
So like little things like that are so simple, but you might be steep, but you've hit the ball well off the ground before. So something about like when you get to a new course, I don't know what it is. Maybe you see the really tight grass and you're like, oh, I got to make sure I take a divot here. Otherwise I'm going to top it. Right. It could be any of those.
It's so weird. Yeah. It's just like as soon as I get to that surface, it's like all of a sudden it's just, I don't know. Or I'll hit like 3 or 4 good ones in a row and then I'll just chunk,
take a big old chunk.
just take a big old. It's like, why did that happen? I don't
Oh,
understand.
golf is hard, man.
Yeah. And then putting is putting. So
Putting is, like I said,
it's,
felt like a kid.
I don't know. Some days it's good. Some days it's bad.
Yeah.
Have you tried
I
that
don't
new
know the
putter? The lab putter? Is that?
Have I?
What? Yeah.
I have seen it a lot, and based on what people know about my teaching style, they say I should love
Right.
it. I just have not learned enough about it. It sounds like there's a lot of good science in it, and
I've heard good things.
yeah, I have too. I actually am seeing way more of them. I saw a ton of them at the PGA show. Like, I guess it must be really good. That's the only thing I can say is like it must be awesome because everybody keeps buying them, and I see more
Yeah.
and more of them.
It looks weird.
The science
It's like
is
a
really great.
big old circle.
Yeah, it's
behind
so
it, right?
weird to look at, but the way it all, I guess the science, it makes a lot of sense. And I see a lot of good, like short game coaches using and endorsing them too. So
Gotcha.
where there's smoke, there's fire, usually. Funny.
appreciate you hopping on and just nerding out with us, and
Oh,
sharing
thank
some
you.
tips.
It's fun to see some Northwestern faces, and anytime I'm happy to come on and nerd out about golf. That's what I do. That's my favorite thing to talk about. I'd
Yeah,
like to tell you the
let's
same
go.
thing.
All right, till next time.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave a rating, review, or tell a friend to check us out. Be sure to follow us at SHRP_training for more content to help you be your best self. Go be great today.